Picture this. It's a cold morning in Paris, January 1720. You're standing in a street so narrow that two horses can barely pass side by side. But right now, there are no horses. There are 10,000 people, packed so tightly that 3 men will be crushed to death before noon. They're not here for bread. They're not here for revolution. They're here to buy a piece of paper. A single share in a company called the Mississippi Company. Yesterday, it was worth 500 livres. This morning, 10,000. By lunch, it could be 15,000. A servant who bought shares with his tip money last month just bought a mansion. A duchess who refused to sell is now richer than some German principalities. And standing in a window above this chaos, watching it all with a glass of Burgundy in his hand, is the most dangerous man in Europe. His name is John Law, a convicted murderer, a professional gambler, a fugitive, and right now, the most powerful banker who has ever lived. But here's the thing no one in that crowd knows yet. In exactly 11 months, every single one of them will be ruined. The money in their pockets will be worth less than the paper it's printed on. France will be bankrupt. And John Law, the man who promised to make everyone rich, will be running for his life. Again. This is the story of the first stock market bubble. And it's a warning that Wall Street still hasn't learned. To understand how a single man nearly destroyed an entire nation's economy, we need to go back 26 years to a very different kind of chaos. Edinburgh, Scotland, 1694. John Law is 23 years old, tall, devastatingly handsome, and he knows it. The son of a wealthy goldsmith, he spent the last 2 years burning through his inheritance in the gambling halls and bedrooms of London. He is, by every account, brilliant with numbers. He can calculate odds faster than any man alive. At the card table, he doesn't just play. He counts, he watches, he waits. And then he takes everything. But John Law has a problem that no amount of mathematics can solve. He has a temper. On April the 9th, 1694, John Law meets a man named Edward Bow Wilson on a narrow London street. The dispute? A woman. The solution? A duel. It lasts less than a minute. Wilson falls, dead before he hits the cobblestones. And just like that, John Law, aged 23, is a murderer. Law is arrested, tried, and sentenced to death. But here is where the legend truly begins. The night before his execution, John Law escapes from prison. The details are murky. Some say he bribed a guard. Others say he climbed a wall with bedsheets. What we know for certain is this. By dawn, he was gone. And so begins one of the most extraordinary journeys in financial history. For the next 20 years, John Law wanders across Europe. Amsterdam, Venice, Genoa, Paris, Turin. He survives on gambling, and he is spectacular at it. In an era when most men play cards for entertainment, Law plays them like a science. But he's doing something else too. Something no one expects from a fugitive card sharp. He's studying money. In Amsterdam, Law watches the Dutch East India Company, the first publicly traded corporation in history, and sees something that changes his life forever. He sees that a piece of paper, a stock certificate, can be worth more than gold. Not because the paper itself has value, but because people believe it does, because they trust the system behind it. And in that moment, a dangerous idea takes root. What if you could build an entire economy on that trust? What if you didn't need gold at all? What if money itself was just an idea? He writes a book titled Money and Trade Considered. It is, in essence, the first modern argument for paper currency, for an economy built not on metal dug from the ground, but on credit, on confidence, on the collective belief that tomorrow will be better than today. It is a work of genuine brilliance, and it is also, though no one knows it yet, the blueprint for the greatest financial catastrophe Europe has ever seen. Because John Law isn't just a theorist, he's a gambler, and he's about to make the biggest bet in history. Not with cards, with an entire country. France, 1716. King Louis XIV, the Sun King, is dead. He leaves behind a palace that cost more than most countries' entire economies, and a nation drowning in debt. The numbers are staggering. France owes 3 billion livres. The annual revenue? Only 145 million. The debt is 20 times the country's income. If France were a person, it would be bankrupt 10 times over. The new regent, Philippe d'Orléans, is desperate. He has tried everything. He has debased the coinage, melting down gold coins and reissuing them with less gold. He has arrested tax collectors. He has even set up a tribunal to squeeze money from wealthy financiers. Nothing works. France is dying. And then John Law walks into Versailles. Imagine this scene. A convicted Scottish murderer, a professional gambler, a man wanted for killing someone in a duel. And he walks into the most powerful court in Europe and says, "I can fix your economy, all of it. Give me a bank." And the most extraordinary part? They say yes. In May 1716, John Law opens the Banque Générale. It is, for all practical purposes, France's first central bank. And here is his genius, the idea that makes him the most celebrated man in Paris overnight. He issues paper banknotes. But not just any banknotes. These notes are guaranteed to be exchangeable for a fixed weight of silver. Unlike the king's coins, which keep getting debased, shrinking in value every few months, Law's paper notes hold their value. For the first time, a French merchant can hold a piece of paper and actually know, that it will be worth the same amount tomorrow as it is today. The effect is electric. Money starts flowing again. Trade picks up. Debts get paid. Businesses open. Within months, Law's paper money is actually trading at a premium to gold coins. People prefer the paper. The regent is thrilled. He makes the bank a royal institution, the Banque Royale. John Law now controls the money supply of the most powerful nation in Europe. But Law isn't done. He's only getting started. In 1717, Law takes control of the Company of the West, better known as the Mississippi Company. On paper, it holds a monopoly on trade with France's vast Louisiana territory, a land stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada, a land that Law claims is overflowing with gold and silver. It isn't. Louisiana is mostly swamp, mosquitoes, and deeply unhappy indigenous peoples. But nobody in Paris knows that, and John Law, the gambler, understands something fundamental about human nature, something that every Wall Street broker, every crypto promoter, every stock market guru still exploits to this day. People don't buy assets. They buy stories, and Law tells the greatest story of his age. He publishes pamphlets describing Louisiana as a paradise. He hires artists to paint lush landscapes of imaginary gold mines. He even ships groups of Frenchmen across the Atlantic to colonize the territory, though most of them will die of disease within months. None of this matters, because the story is irresistible. Infinite riches, just waiting to be claimed, in a land the size of Western Europe. The initial share price of the Mississippi Company 500 livres. And now, watch what happens. 500 becomes 1,000. 1,000 becomes 2,000. 2,000 becomes 5,000. Everyone is buying. Nobles, merchants, servants, cooks, gardeners. A waiter on the Rue Quincampoix makes enough in one trade to buy a country estate. A cobbler retires at 30. A footman shows up to work in a carriage nicer than his master's. The word millionaire is invented. Right here, right now, in Paris, in 1719, to describe these newly rich speculators. And law? Law feeds the fire. He issues more shares. He issues more banknotes to buy those shares. The shares go up, so more people want them. So he issues more notes, so prices go higher. It is a perpetual motion machine of wealth creation. Money creating money, creating money. The share price hits 8,000 livres, then 9,000, then 10,000. A 20-fold increase in less than 2 years. If you put in the equivalent of $10,000, you now have 200,000. The entire French economy is euphoric. John Law is worshipped, literally worshipped. Women throw themselves at him. Nobles beg for meetings. The regent calls him a genius. And somewhere, in the quiet of his study, John Law must have known. He must have known that none of this was real. Because there is no gold in Louisiana. There are no silver mines. The Mississippi Company's actual revenue is negligible. The only thing holding this entire system together is the one thing Law built it on: belief. And belief is the most fragile currency of all. The first crack appears not with a crash, but with a whisper. In early 1720, a prince, the Prince de Conti, sends 3 wagons to Law's bank. He wants to exchange his paper notes for gold coins. All of them. 3 wagons, full of paper, demanding gold. Law is furious. The regent intervenes and forces the prince to return most of the gold. But the damage is done, because now everyone in Paris is asking the same question. Wait, can the bank actually pay us all in gold? The answer, of course, is no. It was never possible. Law has printed far more paper money than there is gold to back it. The entire system relies on the assumption that not everyone will want their gold at the same time. But now they do. It starts slowly. A merchant here, a nobleman there, quietly converting paper back to coin, quietly moving gold across the border to Amsterdam, to London, to anywhere that isn't France. Law sees the panic building and makes a decision that seals his fate. In February 1720, he does the one thing a central banker must never do. He restricts access to gold. New rules. No one may hold more than 500 livres in gold or silver coins. Private citizens are forbidden from buying jewelry, gold plate, or precious stones. He is telling the people of France, your gold is not yours anymore. The paper is all you need. Trust the system. But when you have to force people to trust you, the trust is already gone. May 21st, 1720. Law makes one final catastrophic move. He announces that the value of Mississippi Company shares will be gradually reduced from 9,000 livres to 5,000, a 50% devaluation overnight. Paris erupts. The bank on Rue Vivienne is mobbed. 15,000 people press against the doors. The crush is so severe that 16 people are killed. killed, trampled to death, trying to get their money out of a bank. Mothers hold dead children in front of John Law's carriage, screaming for justice. The share price collapses. 9,000, 7,000, 4,000, 1,000, 500, back to where it started. And then lower, and lower still, until the shares are worth nothing. The banknotes? Worthless. Completely, utterly worthless. Shopkeepers refuse them. Bakers refuse them. You cannot buy a loaf of bread with a currency that was, 6 months ago, considered more reliable than gold. An entire nation's savings, wiped out in weeks. The Duchess of Orleans writes in her diary, "It is inconceivable what immense sums of money have been lost. It is impossible to describe the desolation which prevails." And John Law, the man who was going to save France, the genius who reinvented money, the visionary who was worshipped like a god, John Law is hiding in his attic, with a mob outside calling for his head. In December 1720, John Law flees Paris. Not in triumph, not in a golden carriage. He leaves disguised, in the dead of night, with almost nothing. The man who once controlled more wealth than any private individual in history leaves France with a few gold coins sewn into his coat lining. He will never return. For the next 9 years, John Law wanders Europe once again. Venice, Brussels, London, Copenhagen. But this time, no one is interested in his ideas. No prince invites him to court. No regent offers him a bank. He dies in Venice in 1729. He is 58 years old. He is penniless. His grave has no monument. 300 years later, walk into any trading floor on Wall Street. Open any brokerage app on your phone. Look at the latest meme stock, the newest crypto token, the hottest AI company, and ask yourself, how much of this is real? John Law wasn't a con artist. That's the terrifying part. He genuinely believed in his system. He believed that paper money, backed by the productive potential of a nation, was superior to gold. And in many ways, he was right. Every modern economy runs on exactly this principle. The dollar in your wallet has no gold behind it. It hasn't since 1971. The difference between John Law and the modern Federal Reserve? Scale. And the fact that, so far, people still believe. But the Mississippi Bubble teaches us something that no amount of financial engineering can override. Markets are not machines. They are crowds. And crowds run on emotion. Greed on the way up, panic on the way down. And the transition from one to the other can happen in a single afternoon. The dot-com bubble of 2000, the housing crisis of 2008, the crypto crash of 2022, the AI stock mania of 2025. Every single one follows the same pattern that John Law accidentally invented in 1720. Someone tells a story. The story sounds incredible. People rush in. Prices go up. The rising prices prove the story is true, so more people rush in, and up, and up, and up. Until someone asks, "Wait, is any of this real?" And then it all comes down. John Law showed us 3 centuries ago that the line between genius and catastrophe is exactly one thing: timing. Get out before the crowd and you're a visionary. Stay one day too long and you're a cautionary tale. Every investor alive today is making that same bet. The only question is, And this is the question that kept John Law awake in his attic, listening to the mob below. Do you know when to leave the table? Because the gambler who broke France didn't. In 1720, France's national debt was erased, along with the savings of an entire generation. The word millionaire was invented that year. So was the word bankrupt. Subscribe for more stories that Wall Street doesn't want you to know.